This is such an important thing to know if you are interested about Ayurveda, if you're interested in holistic healing and understanding more about it. These are 3 concepts you have got to get down. And I promise you, once you've got them down, your healing journey is going to really speed up because you're going to be able to identify within yourself when you are out of balance. Hello you, welcome back. Today we have another class all about the topic of Ayurveda, but specifically we're focusing on the 3 doshas. Now this comes up in so many of the other videos I have in this Ayurveda series when we're talking about things like our general health, our skin health, our hair health. We look at something that's known as the doshas. So in this video, you can expect to learn about what are the doshas. There are 3 of them. What does that word actually mean? And you'll be able to get a good understanding, or a better understanding anyway, as to what your predominant dosha is, and also identify if you do have an imbalance. So let's get straight into it. First thing to know is that from the Sanskrit word dosha, it literally translates as fault. So these are 3 doshas or 3 faults that we have within us. Essentially, it presents when there is something wrong. So when one of the doshas is out of balance and we are not feeling quite ourselves, that is a way for us to recognize, okay, there is a fault. The other thing I really want you to be aware of is the common misconception I always hear is people thinking that they are just that one dosha. Actually, we have all 3 of them within us, and so they're just existing within you on a different ratio. Although some people are tridoshic, which means they have an equal level of the 3 doshas. So let's get into what actually the 3 doshas are. The first thing that's important to know is Ayurveda is really based on the 5 elements, known as the Pancha Mahabhuta. So the 3 doshas are made up of 2 elements each. Vata dosha is made up of the element of air and space, also known as ether. Pitta dosha is made up of the elements of both fire and water. And lastly, Kapha or Kapha dosha is made up of the elements of earth and water. Now, each of the 3 doshas also have not only the elements that they're associated with, but also a number of qualities. So when we look at Vata dosha, we're looking at qualities like cold, dryness, lightness, mobile. Pitta dosha, we're looking at heat, fluid, moving. And Kapha dosha, we're looking at the qualities of stickiness or grounding, stability, sturdiness. So when we look at the qualities and we look at the elements, we get a good understanding as to what we associate with the most. 2 things to know here. 1 is understanding what your prakruti is. Prakruti is your main dosha, so which doshas are more dominant within you, and what is that ratio that I mentioned earlier. And the second thing is understanding your vikruti. Now your vikruti is where there is an imbalance. So let me give you an example. You might be predominantly Vata Pitta dosha, so you might have a higher ratio of both Vata and Pitta and a lower level of the Kapha dosha. But you may be experiencing a Kapha dosha imbalance. That would mean that your Prakruti is Vata Pitta, but your Vikruti is Kapha. And there are 7 different types of ratio that we can have. One of them I mentioned earlier, which is being tridoshic, meaning that you have Vata, Pitta, Kapha in equal level of each other. So you're quite balanced with each of them. Doesn't mean you can't get out of balance. It just means that those 3 are in equal ratio. You have predominantly Vata, predominantly Pitta, predominantly Kapha. You have Vata Pitta, Pitta Vata, Vata Kapha. Those make up your 7. So let's start identifying what you think you resonate with the most. So let's look at Vata dosha. People who are predominantly Vata dosha tend to associate more with the qualities cold, lightness, mobile, which means they tend to run a little bit cold. So you might always have cold hands and cold feet. And they tend to like that mobility. So they tend to be on the go quite a lot. They have quite an active mind. They're quite creative. There's lots of thoughts coming up all the time. And that's great. That's amazing. Really great to have such a a vivid and creative mind with so many ideas floating in. When there's a state of imbalance in Vata, then you would recognize too much of the qualities of air and ether. So that might be too much movement. And too much movement can, from a gut health perspective, mean that we feel a lot of gas and we experience lots of bloating. Also, from a mental perspective, it might mean that we have a really busy mind and our mind is almost going into overdrive to the point that it is creating an imbalance in the body. That is when we need to identify whether we have tipped into a Vata dosha imbalance and what could we do to try and get ourselves back into a state of balance. Pitta dosha is made up of the qualities of fire and water, and that fieriness is something that we really see in a lot of the imbalances. But let's first talk about all the benefits of someone who is Pitta dosha predominant. You tend to be quite competitive, really determined, very focused, go-getters, and really kind of constantly working to the next thing, very hard-working. When this tips over into an imbalance, you might see it come up, the fieriness in the skin, such as an inflammation, such as bouts of anger, any intense, overwhelming emotions that just feel a little bit too much. And then lastly, Kapha dosha, made up of the qualities of earth and water. These people tend to have really nice grounding personalities, really calm to be around, generally quite stable and quite go with the flow. Unlike the Vata, who tends to be a little bit here, there and everywhere, the Kapha dosha people tend to be quite stable and content. But sometimes they can have too much of an affinity with that earth element, too much of the grounding. And that might mean that sometimes that can tip into excess laziness, lethargy, and sometimes even lead to depression. So these are great ways to just check in at a really high level. But what I want you to really understand is that Ayurveda is all about holistic healing. It looks at you as an individual, but the whole of you, as opposed to just looking at a rash you might have on your skin and thinking, oh, that's caused because of a Pitta dosha imbalance, or let's put some topical cream on the skin. Instead, it's understanding every bit of you, every single part. So what's your sleep? What's your energy? What's your diet like? What are your relationships like? What's your situation with work? When do you eat in the mornings? When do you eat in the evenings? What are you drinking throughout the day? It is a full, holistic picture of you as an individual. And so I can't diagnose all of you who are watching this video. If you want a personalized Ayurvedic appointment, then definitely book in a consultation with me. All the information on that is below. I'll leave all the links there. I've also got more Ayurveda classes on my membership platform, Unearthed. There's over 260 classes at today's date on there across yoga, meditation, breathwork, philosophy, Ayurveda, and so much more. So if you want to dive deeper, then definitely check out the links. So to recap, understanding your dosha, your characteristic, the main ones, the ratio, which is known as your prakriti, is great for understanding yourself better. It just means that you understand the way that you work, and it gives you a little bit more clarity on the reason you are the way that you are. But similarly, understanding your vikruti, which tends to come up as the same thing, and sometimes time of year makes a difference as well, is also really useful because it means you can identify when you are out of balance and you can understand which dosha is out of balance. So say, for example, if I'm really struggling to get to bed in the evenings and my mind is really racing and I'm really bloated, that is an indication that I've got a Vata dosha imbalance, and that is my vikruti. So I would want to do something that is going to make me feel grounded, nourished. I might want to have a big warming hearty soup. I might want to do abhyanga, which is oil massage, which is a beautiful practice for grounding and stability to calm down the overwhelm and the over excitement or the over anxiety. So there's so many different ways that we can self-heal from things that we have in our homes. Of course, go and see your medical advisor if you're really experiencing some issues, or see an Ayurvedic consultant, always available for you to get in touch with, so do. But I think that it's great to spot these things a little bit quicker rather than leaving them to build up over a long period of time. So what's really good about the concept of the doshas and of Ayurveda is just checking in with yourself and being more aware of how long you've been in a state. And when you've been in that state and you're able to recognize it, you'd be surprised at how the next time you can recognize that state you're in a lot quicker, which means you can then make changes to your lifestyle. Lifestyle intervention is the first port of call, and really understanding, okay, well, what changes do I need to make? Maybe I'm feeling this way because I've been out every single night this week. I've not had any break, any rest, and that's why everything's gone into overdrive and I'm struggling to sleep and I can't think straight because there's too many thoughts in my head. So if that feels like you, slow it down. That was just an example of a Vata dosha imbalance. Let me know if you want a video on each specific dosha imbalance and tips and tricks to help get you back into a state of balance, and I will make one for you. Otherwise, we are going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, there are some other videos in Ayurveda which I will leave up top. So definitely go and check that out. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe. There are lots more classes coming here. And I can't wait to see you again very soon in our next class. Bye.